Hi folks, going to do something a little different this month. February is February Album Writing Month, and we've been talking in the forums, I'll put a link to the website in the description box, about our songwriting workflow and also about our studio setups and about our songwriting notebooks. And that's what I want to talk about today. I thought I'd make a quick video talking about both my songwriting workflow a little bit, but also about specifically the notebooks that I use. I may edit this a little bit. We'll see how it goes. I normally post tutorials with you looking at me and me speaking to you face to face with my ukulele in hand. So this is a little different. But let me know if you liked this content. I can do more drill down into any of these areas, but I'm going to kind of just give you the overview here. So what you're looking at is the corner of my computer desk where I do all my day job work, as well as a lot of my ukulele songwriting and also the kind of online work that I do for Patreon and Cynthia Lynn's community and things like that on the computer. So what you're looking at right at the top here are three of my songwriting notebooks. Now, this is my original songwriting notebook. It's a Rhodia. It's kind of one of those flip top pads. I've covered up my contact information here. I always put my name or at least my phone number and email address in my songwriting notebooks. But the way that I usually like to work is on graph paper, which might seem anti-creative to some people, but actually I find that it strikes the perfect balance for me between orderly and tidy and also creative. I don't know what it is about graph paper. I just find it, it sparks some creativity in me. So your mileage may vary on that one, but what I like to do is find a notepad with graph lined, or it's often called squared paper or grid paper. Rhodia makes tons of different sizes and tons of different types of notebooks. This is not sponsored by any of these notebook makers. What I liked about this one, and I do believe I took out a kind of a hard back on this so it'd be a little more floppy and flexible so I could write on both sides of the page. I like that the paper was thick enough that I could write on both sides of the page. There's two things you get with notebooks apparently. I've just learned this recently, but you get what's called feathering, where you kind of see a little bit of the ink on the opposite side through the page. I do get that sometimes on this, depending on what pen I use. There's also what's called bleed through, and I use a pen, usually the Uniball Vision Needle, sometimes the Micro. I just like the way this pen feels in my hand. I like the way it feels on the paper, and I like the way that it looks when I'm writing with it. So I usually use those, sometimes another Uniball, as I said. But I don't get much bleed through with those on most papers. So it's a pretty safe pen for me, and this paper has worked really well. I did go through the notebook in one direction and then reverse myself and go back and fill in the opposite pages. I'll also sometimes draw myself boxes. That's not an example of it, but sometimes I'll draw myself a box and give myself space on a page for a completely unrelated idea. But I usually leave the first few pages blank so I can fill them in as I go with things like progressions for different songs that I'm saving to try out for myself, or maybe rhyming words or tips from people on songwriting. This was the first, as I said, notebook that I went through. When I was done with that one, I wanted something that was a little sturdier. You'll see this cover's kind of getting cracked. So I went with a soft hardcover. I don't know. It's one that lays flat as well, which is really nice. But I was able to do sort of a lot of random note taking. I take these with me everywhere I can. If I have a bag big enough, I'll throw it in there. So it'll include, if I'm at a lecture or a church service, or if I am watching a movie at home or TV, sometimes I'll have it with me right there by the couch. Here's the example of what I was talking about. Sometimes I'll draw myself boxes in the empty space so that I can come back in and fill them in just with random thoughts. But really, the sky's the limit on these. I can put in whatever I like. And I don't need to use it all. Lots of these lines are stupid, and that's okay. Here's an example again of what I'm talking about. I leave these last few pages blank so I can fill them in with different ideas, different tips and tricks from other books that I've read on songwriting. Here's the front pages. It's kind of just experimenting with what are all the different structures I can find and I can think of. This was a good notebook for me. It's by Princeton Architectural Press, and one of the cool things about it was it had different kinds of grid or graph lines. So it had the regular boxed or squared, but it also had dotted pages. It had ones where it had more like diamond shapes, larger boxes. I didn't love writing in some of these, like the larger boxes. And there's also one where the lines were gradiated. This one had kind of circular. This one with varying thicknesses and thinnesses I didn't really enjoy writing on. So while I really did like this notebook and it was, you know, good in a lot of ways, when I was finished with that one, I moved on to this Penco, which is what I am currently using. You'll see the cover is almost completely worn off, and that's with only 6 months of use. So not a very durable lettering on the cover, but the cover is nice and durable. It is a plastic, so if you're trying to avoid plastics, not one to go with. But the thing I liked about this one was that it could stand a little spill or a little rain and still hold up pretty well. Again, I left, you know, I'm writing notes when I read books and things like that. For the back of it, there's some notes from a book that I read, also from some YouTube videos on songwriting. But on this one, when I first started using it, I felt like there was too much feathering. I was seeing too much ink through the page to write on both sides. But I've recently changed my mind about that. I saw a video where someone talked about their workflow, and they talked about using one side of a 2-page spread for kind of what I normally do, which is random notes, random jotting down, things you overhear, phrases you love, ideas for titles. And I do, speaking of ideas for titles, some people have a whole book just for their titles, but I have a little washi tape flags that I make for myself out of this Japanese paper tape, and I sometimes will flag a page I know I want to come back to. Like if I have a page that's just of titles or hooks, I'll give myself a little flag so I can flip back there easily. But what this person suggested, and I'll link to his video so you can see it because I don't want to take credit for his idea, was using the right-hand side of the spread for your general stuff and any research or note-taking that you're doing. And then as a draft starts to emerge, as you start to get whole lines and you're rhyming and you're putting together choruses and verses, to do that on the other side, like on the left-hand side. So I turned mine sideways and just experimented with it. I actually did this yesterday, and I didn't get too much feathering through the page. You can see it if I put a light behind it, but it's not bad. So I think I'm going to continue doing that and keep filling out this book a little bit more before I move on to the next one. It is almost done, but I don't want to leave all that blank space. So I'll continue with that. I also like that this one's fairly portable, but for some reason the slightly smaller size, this is what's called an A5. This slightly smaller size just has not been as much fun to write in for me. I really feel like I just like having a little bit more space for my hand to hold down the page, even if it does lie open flat, and that's another problem with this one. It does not lie all the way open flat very well. It kind of pops back up and flips its own pages. So it's been a handsome, except for the weathering, but I don't really mind that, a handsome and portable volume, and I like the soft cover, but I won't be repurchasing that. Here's the next one I'm going to use. This is a Romeo. There's another brand that this is made by, or at least that I saw in the listing when I purchased this one. I don't remember what it was, but this one's just one kind of graph, one kind of grid. The paper is very slick, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to enjoy writing on it. I've only written my contact information into this one, so we'll have to do a little bit of experimentation as I start using it. I like that it lies flat. I don't love the bulk of a spiral binding, but this is the first one I'm trying with spiral. We'll see if I end up liking it or not. I've got an idea already out. This happens to me a lot, where I already have my eye on another notebook that I'll probably use after this one. I'm really trying to resist purchasing it and skipping this one because I don't want to purchase things I don't use. But I think this one will be pretty satisfying just in its plain grid. It's got a nice harder cover. It's not as plasticky feeling. I'm not sure if that's all cardboard paper or if it's got some plastic in it. It feels more like a hard paper, but it feels like it will be a little bit spill and rain resistant. It's got a hard cover on the back too, but I do love that it's going to open flat and have those nice big A5 spread both sides for me. So I'll try to continue trying that workflow idea of having notes on the right and then also the drafts as they emerge on the left. So what do I do once I have a draft emerging? As I mentioned, even in these before I was using that left hand, right hand workflow idea, when I would start to write something and it would begin to become a song where I felt like I had lines that were grouping together, or where I felt like I had a chorus I wanted to work with more, or maybe I was working from a prompt. That's also something I collect in these songwriting notebooks as prompts I read different places or get ideas for. What do I do when I start to have that draft emerging? I'll usually write out a portion of it on the page. I might even write the whole thing if the song's coming really fast. But at a certain point, I'm going to want to move over to my keyboard. And I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but I definitely like to move over to the keyboard with the drafts that are emerging. I will type them up on my laptop, on my desktop. I don't really prefer to do it on my phone, but I will if I really need to, if I'm on an airplane or something. I just like to have the chance to use a keyboard if possible. I type faster that way. And then I can, make edits and things really quickly on the keyboard. At a certain point, I'm going to move the whole thing over to my iPad, which is where I tend to lay in my chords and my melody. Now, some people write chords or melody first. I tend to go lyrics first. I have occasionally come up with a melody idea before the song, and so that can work a different way. But what I'll generally do is I will take the song and I will either put it into a draft email that I can copy over to my iPad, or I'll use something like this Cloud Clip app, which will let me sync between certain devices, so I can cut and paste on one and put it right over onto the other one. It's going to end up, though, in OnSong, which is something I purchased a long time ago. Their payment it works differently now. So I don't know if it's still what people would consider worth the money. I bought it outright, and it's going to let me lay in the chords really easily, because once I start adding chords and brackets, it'll give me a menu, and I can easily choose from the ones I already have and add new ones. And another thing I like to do is I've made an emoji language for myself that helps me remember where my melody is going. So as I'm building the emoji, I drop in these arrows, and sometimes I use other symbols just to remind myself of what I'm doing with that draft melody. And I start playing it while also using an audio recorder. So the voice recorder on my phone or my iPad is really helpful to me. I will start playing as I work through the melody, and I'll just delete older drafts. And when I have a melody that I feel like is pretty solid, then I'll take it to video and I'll record it here at my desk usually. Just the simplest setup that I have is to use this ring light if I'm not wearing my glasses. I mean, I sometimes will use it with my glasses, but it creates a lot of glare. And also if it's a little dark in here, I've got a little clip here that can hold my phone, which I'm recording this with, so I can't show you. I've got a little microphone that plugs into my phone, and I'll just record a quick and dirty demo. That said, I do record a number of takes, so I make sure I get the melody the way I want it. I may do some editing while I'm recording too. That can be a good time to figure out what actually works for singing and what doesn't for me. And then once I have the demo video, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I'm going to share it on my social media, and I will usually also put the lyrics into a couple of documents. So I like to use the lyrics or keep the lyrics in a Google Drive document, and also another Google Drive document with both the lyrics and the chords, so that I have some backup of that. Some people will keep backups of their computer, on their computer, of their videos as well. I don't do that because mine are such quick and dirty demos. I could record them again. I just want a record of what the tune sounded like. And then I hopefully, because I've backed it up in theory using other social media websites, unless they all went down at once, I would have that song somewhere. So my top tips for you are going to be to carry a notebook with you and try it out. It's not for everybody, but see if you like it. Write down things you hear in books, movies, church, lectures, conversations, YouTube videos. Write down quotes, poems, and songs. But if it's someone else's words, I often try to twist it a little bit, so I'm not cribbing directly from someone. Collect prompts, collect song structures. Leave pages for those in your notebook if you can. Collect notes and tips. I also will use my notes app on my phone if I am out and about and I don't have a songbook with me. Then I will just transfer it into my songbook later and then delete the note. I have had notes disappear on me, so I don't trust them for long-term backup. A draft email is also a great way to write down song ideas and save them for yourself, or email them to another device or something like that. So I will use that as well. Try to go through and delete those every once in a while so my, devices don't get too full. Same thing with all those files and the voice recorder and those sorts of things, the video drafts of me trying a song again and again to make it work. I like to also use some reference books. So you might have seen this one over here. Surprising Rhyming is a really great one. I like to read interviews by songwriters, and I like to read books on how to write songs. Some I find more use in than others, but I get as many as I can secondhand, used, or at my library. This American Idioms Handbook is one I picked up. Used. My mom got me, oops, there goes my microphone. My mom got me the Dictionary of Wordplay, which has fun, just fun with language, with the English language, and sometimes that'll spark an idea. This is my original rhyming dictionary from when I was a kid writing poetry, so I use Surprising Rhyming more, but that is handy. There's also lots of online rhyming indexes and things like that, so I'll use those too. When I'm putting music into my iPad and I'm also working on melody, I can share more about this in another video, and I do have a couple other songwriting videos, but I'll use a circle of fifths, I'll use a random chord progression generator to give me ideas. Those can be really helpful too. When I am saving to YouTube, you can do it unlisted, you can do it private completely, you can just do it for yourself, or you can share with other people. I've really enjoyed sharing, but it's not for everybody, and I get that. And then let's see, was there anything else I wanted to say? Just again, back it up, have it in a couple places, but I try to keep from having too much work copying things around. As much as I can do, just like cut and paste a whole thing, that I find helpful. I would like to, in the future, print stuff out and have it in a binder that I could use in, say, live gigs where I don't want to use the iPad. The iPad is not great outdoors in sunlight because there's a lot of glare on the screen, so I want to have some paper copies of the songs too. Again, this has been very odd not showing you my face, and I know the visuals haven't always been exciting, but I hope this video is interesting to some of you, and I promise it won't be all songwriting content for me all the time, but for those who are interested in it, let me know in the comments what you do, what your workflow is, whether you use a notebook, what notebook you love, what pen you love. I'm interested in all of that. And also, if there are things you want me to drill down into further in my process of writing songs, let me know. Do check out my original workshop on songwriting that I shared, and I will put links in the description box for that, and also I think I had 10 or 11 tips that I shared around the holiday season for writing a quote-unquote holiday song, but not just a holiday song. You can check that out too. Again, thanks for joining me at my desk today. More content to come, and if you're not into songwriting at all, but you watch this whole thing just because you're nice and you watch my videos, then don't worry, this isn't all you're going to see. Join me over at FOM if you do want to do some writing, though. Again, the link will be in the description box. It's totally free, and it's a great community over there of people who will support you and encourage you on your songwriting journey. See you on the internet.